Hello everyone, and welcome to a impromptu video that I'm making with Sam, aka Bad Boy of Science. We're going to be talking about some British politics today that you may or may not be aware of, depending on whether you live in the UK. If you do, it's kind of hard to avoid, but I imagine it's pretty easy to avoid this
Yeah,
subject if you're living anywhere
which
except
has
the
its
UK.
advantages, of course.
Yeah, I mean, even other countries in Europe, I'm sure, aren't taking it that seriously compared to how serious it is here. So
Yeah.
these are the election. Maybe you could help me along here. In this election, we're voting for who we want to represent our area of the UK in the European Parliament. So we get seats assigned in the same sort of American system. We get seats assigned according to how many people live in our area, and we can choose between the main parties who will have their own representatives, and they have their own sort of tiered. What do you call it? Each party has a list of representatives on priority, sort of. So if they get one seat, they get one of the people, the person who's at the top, and if they get more seats than that, then they get the next person down, and that's for each area. It's a pretty complicated election, and I know I sent you that.
Yeah, it seems like a needlessly complicated system, isn't it? So basically, depending on your share of the vote, the person with the most votes or the party with the most votes gets one seat. Then they get that vote divided in half, that vote share divided in half. And if they're still ahead of the second vote share, they get another seat. Then they get that vote share, the total vote share from the start divided in three. And then if they're still ahead, they get another. And if somebody else has taken over, now they get a seat and they get divided by two. I think it's called the De Hooft proportional representation system. Needlessly complicated, but in the end, sort of turns out similarly to any other proportional representation system, but kind of takes into account the lumpiness and the small number of finite seats that you have up for grabs.
Yeah, so once you get your head around it, it's not that.
It's not too bad.
It's not that bad. It's just that it just sounds really complicated. The joke that I made about it, or maybe it was my husband, said that when I first read about it, it sounded like the upkeep phase of a German board game.
Yeah, well, it would make sense that we're using a German system in the EU, right?
So, it just sounds German. I don't know how to it's like it, and that's not to say that it's bad. I mean, the quality of being German, I think, means that it works, but it's just a little bit complicated and dense, you know.
I got Dutch off it, to be honest. I thought it sounded
really.
more Dutch,
yeah, it's called Hoft or whatever. So
we'll go with German. It makes more sense.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I don't. You said you voted. We won't. I don't know if it's impolite to just to say who you voted for, but
it's fine. It's fine by me.
Okay.
I voted for the Brexit Party here, and the overwhelming reason why I did that is not any particular want for Brexit. I was a Remainer at the time of the referendum, but I've kind of come more towards the centre. But just because I think the democratic will of the people in that vote needs to be carried out, and that was the overwhelming feeling for me. So I voted for the old Brexit Party here in Leeds. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Really, I voted Remain in the first referendum, but then the kind of incompetence of our own Conservative Party who've been leading the EU negotiations up until this point, and what seems to be like a purposeful reluctance to actually carry out the will of the people is just irritated me to the point where I feel like we really needed to vote for a party that explicitly said that they wanted Brexit. And Brexit Party that's got it in the name. Nigel Farage has been a keen advocate of Brexit for a very long time. Not that I really have much love for any of his other policies. I don't hate him as a person. I don't approve of milkshakes being thrown at him. Yeah. But the fact that he wants to leave the EU is good enough for me to vote for his party in this election.
I think it's really interesting with May leaving this week because, as you say, I get the feeling that a lot of people have turned against the Conservatives because of their unwillingness to go through with Brexit. So the Conservatives, I think, were terrified that if they went through with any harder form of Brexit, that would tank the economy and they'd disappear into insignificance, like Labour did after their handling of the financial crash. But ironically, the stalling and the kind of two-facedness and the indecisiveness of the Tories has kind of destroyed them on the other side of that anyway, particularly in these elections and in the local elections that happened a couple of weeks ago. So it's sort of led us to the same place where the Tories have really taken a hammering for not making a decision.
In your own opinion, would you characterize it more as incompetence or unwillingness? I mean, there's that famous quote about never attributing to malice what can be attributed to, incompetence or stupidity. But for me, it really does seem like the people representing the country do not have the same views as the people who voted in the referendum, at least.
I agree. I think that's exactly the feeling that I hear from your average man on the street, is that they simply don't trust the people in power, because I think the people who are making the decisions on Brexit in the government actually probably have the best interests of the people at heart. They think, we've seen these economic forecasts, we've seen what a hard Brexit might do in those forecasts, and we don't want to hurt the people in that sense. So I think they have good intentions, but it's their job to carry out the will of those people.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of, I mean, although their intentions are probably good, as you say, I think there's something just rubs me the wrong way about that idea that these politicians, the MPs who are voting on these deals, and the people actually arranging for negotiations in the EU, they feel that they know better than the people who voted, or that they think they know better than the people who put them in that position in the first place, people who voted for them. Just, it really rubs me the wrong way, just this whole...
And I think this is what you see with Theresa May bringing her deal back 2 and 3 times, or even trying for a 4th time with a few words changed and, a new layer of gloss put on it, is I can sell this if it just sort of looks right, if I can give it the right wording and just tell them it's Brexit and get a Brexit in sort of just in name, but not really in any sort of policy, then the public will eat that and it will be good enough. And I think she's undervalued how the public would respond to that. I think they're onto that game and they want something a little bit harder. Obviously, the deal that she's brought back hasn't been acceptable to either the pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit people. So it pretty much shows what a mess she's made of the whole deal. So in answer to your initial question, I think it's some good intentions to do the right thing in their own mind, and then massive incompetence in trying to get that across the line.
Yeah, I put up a poll on Twitter, I don't know if you saw it because I tagged you in it, talking about this interview, although I did say it was going to be a stream, but we've discussed it's going to be a video now. We're not streaming, so I asked my Twitter followers who do not live in England how much they think they know about this election and about the EU situation with Brexit in the UK in general. And the 3 options were nothing, a bit, and a lot. And to be honest, I think I have to put myself with most of my Twitter followers, which is that I know a bit about this, about all of this Brexit stuff. So I really didn't read any of the deals that Theresa May put forward to the EU or to her own members of Parliament to vote on. I actually didn't read any of them personally, and I don't think if I had read them that I would have understood them. So I really have to confess that I don't know how different. I really don't know how different those deals were that she put forward. All of them have been rejected, obviously, either by the EU or by our own Parliament for whatever reasons.
I think it said a lot that neither side really liked them, that suggested they weren't really that good. I think the really interesting thing to come out of today that I've seen is this sort of clamour for the narrative based on the numbers or the percentages of the vote share that each of the the pro-Brexit parties and the anti-Brexit parties got to decide who was quote unquote the winner of this election.
I just realised that
and as you say, it's usually coming from people who don't really seem to know a lot about the issue, and they're just filling it with their own confirmation bias. So I've seen, because obviously the Brexit party, which is very clear to leave, and some of the Conservatives, UKIP, were definitely clear on leaving, and Brexit party did very well, came top of the polls. A lot of people are claiming, landslide for Brexit party. Everyone in the country obviously wants Brexit. And then on the other side of it, people are adding together and cobbling together, the Lib Dems, the Greens, parts of Labour, who said very clearly that they wanted to remain, and saying, well, that fraction of vote is higher than the Brexit party got. So clearly everyone wants a second referendum and wants to stay in the EU. And it's just really interesting how people are scrambling to get a narrative out of that and cobble together, five different parties on the basis of a 37% turnout and see that as conveying a very clear, new, legitimate message on Brexit. When the same people last week were saying that a referendum that had 72% turnout in 2016 is still giving us some ambiguous and illegitimate mandate on Brexit. So it's been fascinating today to just see the level of sort of confirmation bias that's filling those results.
Yeah, it's a bit of a Rorschach test of a news story, because you can kind of see whatever you want to see in it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to rearrange the window quickly so we can look at this. Because I just realised that we haven't actually talked about what the results were of the election. We voted on Thursday, and we had to wait for the rest of Europe to finish voting. And then we got the votes starting last night, which is when I wanted to live stream with you. But it turns out that even though we voted on Thursday, we still don't get to find out the results of our own vote until today. So anyway, so
it's bizarre that some guy in Finland is watching out for the UK results before he decides who to vote for as an MEP.
No, I understand that. I understand that we had to wait for all of the polls to close all over Europe. But I don't understand why, once those polls are closed, why it still took like 4 hours for all of the results from the UK to come in. Like, hadn't they counted them before that? They should have been counting while everyone was voting.
Maybe that was tied into the first point, that they thought if people had counted them and knew the results, that they'd get leaked out into the.
Oh, maybe,
Maybe that was the idea behind that. So
that's a good point. I actually hadn't considered that the people counting them may leak the results.
Yeah, so a second level of protection. You know how the EU likes to put in place legislation. They love a bit of it.
Yeah, so we're both looking at the same article here, I hope.
Yes.
About this. This is sort of the main, right at the top of the BBC News website. You've got this huge sort of banner for this election. They know this is the biggest thing going on today is these results and the interpretation of these and sort of celebration that the Brexit Party are having. For those of you who don't know, the Brexit Party is Nigel Farage's new party after he left UKIP. UKIP, before 2016, I think, was seen as a very fringe, very far right, and I'd say even racist party by a lot of the general public. And Nigel Farage, being the head of that party, took a lot of that baggage with him. But I think starting this new party, leaving UKIP and starting this new Brexit Party perhaps did save him a little bit from that baggage.
My friend was commenting actually on that change and how impressed he was with the councillors who the Brexit Party have been able to put forward. So very diverse, lots of successful business people, lots of women, some minority candidates, and sort of headed off that sort of racist white man image that potentially had taken over UKIP, and which they've stuck a little bit more with by bringing on people like Tommy Robinson and Sargon, whatever you think of those figures. The media sort of has it in for them. And I think UKIP maybe didn't do the smartest thing by bringing those people on board, because although I don't necessarily think they're the demons that they're portrayed to be, the media image of them is that they fulfill that old kind of racist UKIP standard. So Farage breaking away from that seems to have been a bit of a masterstroke.
Yeah, I was listening to the Smug Lefties on Radio 4 yesterday. That was before all the results were in. And Frankie Boyle was on whatever that panel shows, one of the comedy news panel shows that they have.
It's a shame, because I enjoy his comedy. And when he starts talking about politics, I just
I like him too. But he was still, and the rest of the panelists as well, was still pushing this idea of the people who voted for Brexit being white middle-aged males, which is just not possible in terms of the turnout. There's just not enough white middle-aged males to make up 50% of that vote. But never mind that, because
I was saying to you the other day, it's amazing how these kind of nuanced arguments have shifted from a discussion of the facts to a discussion of sort of these power hierarchies, as this sort of leftist narrative has become more pervasive in our politics. So when we used to talk about abortion, we were saying the other day, you talk about, fetal development and consciousness and this kind of thing. And now we talk about, it's all about keeping women down. When we talked about the climate, it used to be about sea levels and ice caps, and now it's about climate justice and, the poorer countries getting the harder end out of climate change and this sort of thing. I think they just love to go to that narrative that, this is white, straight men keeping everyone else down.
Yeah.
Shoehorning it into whatever the story is, and it's all just a bit boring.
It's just a lazy replacement for an
argument. It's just lazy, yeah. It's just boring.
Yeah, but yeah, as you were saying, the Brexit Party has become, I think, a little bit more mainstream. They've got Anne Widdecombe as she an MEP, or is she just a supporter?
She's an MEP now. I think she won a seat, or is she? I don't know. My understanding was that she won a seat and had come out of retirement to do that, or she's just a cheerleader. She doesn't strike me as looking like a cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that all of the MEPs who are elected today, or rather who were elected, this weekend, they're not going to be MEPs for very long, and they're not. What they do potentially isn't very important, since we should be leaving the European Union in October. So they'll only be in the job until that point. So it is a bit of a what do you call it?
Yeah, you're right. And this is the interesting thing, actually, about the results, is that it's hard to see how they translate into a general election, because this really was a free swing at the big parties. So first up, more people seem to care more about who their MP is than their MEP.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And supposedly, as you say, we're leaving anyway. So how much impact is this going to have in the next 5 months?
Yeah. It's more of an opinion poll, really.
Yeah, exactly. It was more an opinion poll, more a slap at the big parties. So people seem happy to lend their vote to these smaller parties for these EU elections. But then will they return to the big parties for the general election? And also, the European elections isn't first past the post. It's a proportional representation system. So people can vote for the Greens, they can vote for the Liberal Democrats, and feel that their vote isn't being as wasted as it might be in a general election.
Well, you can see in this in this breakdown that the Welsh Party, please excuse me, Plaid Cymru. I never pronounced that right.
Mine's as good as yours. I'm sure.
The only way I know, the only word I know in Welsh is Cymru, which means Welsh, I think.
Yeah.
They were able to get 1 seat despite having 1% of the national vote, because obviously all of their votes were concentrated in one area, so they can get a seat in the European Parliament now.
Yeah.
Just for people who don't know, I want to explain the Liberal Democrat Party. Who came second, countrywide. They won outright in London and a few other places, pretty much the only. So I'm just going to show that map that's amazing. There's a blue wave spreading across the country. I'm going to zoom in a little bit there. You can see all of this blue, sort of teal colour, blue-green almost, is all Brexit Party. That means that the Brexit Party got the most votes in these areas. And these yellow bits, these sort of yellow-orange bits, are all the Liberal Democrats. So the Liberal Democrats were running on the policy that I don't really understand this. Maybe you can explain this. They were saying they were cancel Brexit. That was their platform. If you don't like Brexit, vote for us. But to my understanding, having MEPs, even if they had 100% of the MEPs, they couldn't actually stop Brexit just through that. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes. So my understanding is that I think it would be hard to get away from the idea that this election was largely, not entirely, but largely a vote on Brexit. Do you want to vote for a party that is pro-Brexit, or do you want to vote for a party which is anti-Brexit? And the Brexit Party obviously set itself up as pro-Brexit. So did UKIP, and the parties that were against were the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. And Tories and Labour, sort of, you can decide amongst yourself.
A bit of grey zone there.
They seem half foot in, half foot out. Of course, there's a lot of other factors, but it seems that mostly this was a vote about what do you think about Brexit. And in that arena, you would, and with the Tories sort of reeling, you'd have expected Labour to kind of romp away with it, and they didn't. People went to the Liberal Democrats, and it seems if there's any clear message that comes from this election, it's that clarity of message on Brexit is really something that voters were looking for regarding this election, because it's the parties that had a clear message on Brexit, either for or against, so for with Brexit Party, against with Greens and Liberal Democrats, who made the biggest gains. And then within that choice, you can decide Lib Dems or Greens. And I think the Greens picked up a lot after the Extinction Rebellion stuff and all the climate conversation we've had recently. So you could pick your poison on pro-Remain, but the real big choice was whether you wanted to vote Brexit Party or a party that was pro-Remain.
Yeah.
Labour, well, here's what I think what's going to happen now is I think Labour will realise that the only way that they can get the votes back that they've sort of hemorrhaged to the Greens and the Liberal Democrats is to move a bit further towards supporting a second referendum. So they've been sitting on the fence because they have a lot of MPs who are in constituencies which voted leave. But I think now they're going to realise that they have to go for that second referendum and get back that sort of support they had in 2017, where they managed to kind of consolidate the Remain vote, and then they can hoover up the Green and the Lib Dem vote. And you've had Emily Thornberry, Tom Watson coming out already today saying that Labour need to have a far firmer stance on Brexit. And I think on the flip side, the Tories are going to be forced to move further towards a kind of harder Brexit to be able to hoover up that vote that went to the Brexit Party that was standing on an idea of a hard Brexit, of a no-deal Brexit. So I think what we're going to get in the end is really more polarisation. And what you might end up getting de facto is a second referendum, because if Parliament is still split and the Tories move further towards a hard Brexit, Labour moves further towards a second referendum, you might be forced to have a general election where Labour stands on a manifesto of having a second referendum, and the Tories stand on a manifesto of leaving whatever come hell or high water. And what we actually end up with is a general election, which is actually, in reality, just a second referendum, leave or remain. Do you want to leave with the Tories, or do you want to remain with Labour?
Yeah, or just vote again with Labour.
Yeah, exactly. So you get, or vote again with Labour. So you end up with a sort of second referendum via the back door, if you will, just because Parliament is so split. But what another thing that was really interesting, sorry to drone on a little bit.
Okay.
I did a little bit of maths of my own on the results.
Oh boy.
And yeah, well, you know me, I love a bit of the old science. So if the Brexit Party got their 32% as they did, and UKIP lost 24% as they did from 2014, the last election, if you assume that all of that 24.2% from UKIP went to the Brexit Party didn't actually take very much off the Conservatives and Labour.
Yeah.
They took it all off UKIP. So you can see Labour's logic of wanting to chase all the other votes that presumably they hemorrhaged to the Lib Dems and the Greens, because they're never going to get those pro-leave votes off Brexit Party and the Tories, who are more pro-leave. So you can see the logic with Labour of shifting towards being that party that offers a referendum and trying to crush the Lib Dems and Greens when it's first past the post in a general election.
Yeah. I don't want to underestimate the number of Labour voters who did vote for Brexit, though, because that is considerable. And
that's a fair point.
And Tommy Robinson, who had his own, who was running as an MEP in his own kind of, not as a party, but just as an independent candidate, I think he was banking on a lot of that sort of working class that the Labour often looks to for their voter base. So it's not necessarily, it's not self-evident that the pro-Brexit vote comes mostly from Conservatives and from UKIP, who were the pro-Brexit party
before. It's not a perfect delineation. No, you're exactly right.
I also think it's important to make a distinction, even though this is pretty much, as we said before, as it's an official opinion poll of the parties, and in relation to Brexit, I think it's important to recognise how different this vote breakdown is compared to the last general election. The Lib Dems did absolutely terribly in the last, as I recall. It was they massive losses compared to the previous general election, and yet they're the second biggest party in this this election. I don't think anybody. Well, it's hard to tell, obviously, but I don't think that people really want. If this is a vote for the general election for the leadership of the country, I don't think we'd be seeing that many people who want Nigel Farage to be the leader of the party that leads Britain, and I don't think there's many people. Similarly, there aren't that many people who want the Lib Dems to be the party in power. But in terms of the EU, they did want to vocalise this urge, either pro or anti-Brexit.
I think that's a very good summary. I think one thing that's interesting in the Brexit Party's favour, they didn't get the 35% or more that they were expecting. They got about 32%. But what you have to realise is also that Brexit Party is standing on a kind of manifesto, if you will. I know Farage doesn't like using the word, of a WTO hard Brexit. So, as you say, there's a lot of other people, potentially Labour voters, who are happy with Brexit but want a more orderly, softer Brexit. Who wouldn't come out in this election to vote for Farage because he wants a no-deal Brexit, and he's quite an unsavoury character to a lot of people. Gets smeared in the newspapers, gets milkshakes thrown on him. So it could be actually that there's a lot more Brexiteers in the country who would have voted for a pro-Brexit party, but they didn't want to vote for the Brexit party because they want Brexit, but they don't want a no-deal Brexit. So reading from these results to a general election, I think, is a very, very difficult task. And as I said at the start, I think all the parties want to spin it and read their confirmation bias into it and try and show their supporters that they didn't do, as badly or did even better than they did. That's just the usual political spin. I think it's hard to tell much apart from that people wanted to vote for parties that had a clear message on Brexit. I think that was the big takeaway.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to. It's a good segue for what I wanted to talk about in this video most of all, which is this graph that the BBC put into this big article, a big headline article today on the BBC website. They fit this graph in. Above that graph I showed before, the map of the UK with the huge blue wave smothering every single other party below the Hadrian's Wall.
Blue waves after the US midterms, it's taking on the words, taking the terms.
Just as a quick aside, I think it's interesting that the colours are completely swapped for left and right wing in the UK compared to America. Look, the red is the left wing, and so the blue wave is actually a conservative wave.
Yes,
and that goes for Brexit Party as well to some extent, as we discussed before. But so above that in the article, which usually in terms of journalism means that it's more important. They want people to see this before they see the next thing, because probably a lot of people will stop reading at some point. Before that blue wave map of the country, we have this breakdown of what the BBC reckons is anti-Brexit votes versus pro-Brexit votes. And you could not. It's amazing how this graph, anti-Brexit versus pro-Brexit, tells a completely different visual story compared to the map of the actual representative votes, in each region. And it's
I don't want to get into this BBC bashing because it's just too easy. but you're right. It seems a bit incongruous between the two.
Yeah. So you can see here that they've added up to get this anti-Brexit vote to come to 40.4%. They've added up Lib Dems, Greens, SNP, Change UK, Cuck Party, also known as.
They're done, by the way.
And this unpronounceable.
Anna Soubry is on suicide watch today. I hope they've taken her shoelaces away because she is done.
Yeah, that's quite funny because the Brexit Party and this Change UK Party, they're both very, very recent inventions, right? The pro-Brexit Party, they keep saying in the news it didn't exist until 6 weeks ago, which is just amazing that they've won such a majority. But anyway, the Change UK Party, the Cuck Party, is it's a complete opposite story. It's like they had such high hopes and they've all been dashed.
Well, even Chuka Umunna, who was sort of one of the leading lights when they broke away from their parties, I think he lost. Or they lost in Lambeth to the Lib Dems. So it seems that the Cuck Party lost to the parties that they came from, Labour and the Conservatives, and were also crushed by the party that they want to become, which was the Lib Dems. So a very bad showing for the Cucks. They really did get cucked.
Yeah. Please don't say it too much because we don't want to get our video flagged. As I discussed in my last video.
Yes.
Keep saying the forbidden word.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, I know I said it once, but I think I got away with it. So I think I just wanted to point out that both mainly the Conservatives who've been leading the EU negotiations, despite the fact they maybe haven't been doing a very good job, maybe are a little bit unwilling to go for a harder Brexit, but they are, in my mind, unambiguously a pro-Brexit party, and they should be either included in this blue bar or at least exclude some of these other parties that are in the yellow bar if you're going to be. It's like it just doesn't seem fair to put like 6 parties in one bar and then 2 parties in the one below.
I don't want to get into this idea that the BBC's left leaning, even though I think it is. But you'd think the Conservative would at least go sort of 75% of that bar goes into pro-Brexit. And then with Labour, you really don't know what they stand on. So maybe half goes into anti-Brexit and half goes into pro-Brexit.
I don't know. Did you get the pamphlets through the door saying please vote for our party? I got one from UKIP. I got one from Brexit Party and Labour. I don't know if I got Conservative or not. They're all in the bin now, but I wish I'd kept them because they really. I mean, it's not exactly crystal clear, but Labour have a specific section that says it's just like it's a very quick pamphlet, but one paragraph is dedicated to Brexit and the EU, and they said they want to maintain a close relationship with the EU while leaving the European Union, if I remember correctly. It's like they didn't say we want to stay, they didn't say we want a second referendum. They said they want to handle the negotiations better and maintain a close relationship. That means a soft Brexit, but it's not an anti-Brexit position. And I know they left it out of the anti-Brexit, so fair enough. It's a bit of a grey zone, but
you're right. That breakdown of the bottom grey bars, depending on which ones you put it into, you can kind of come up with whatever you want. What we can take away from this is the country's very divided still. Anyone who didn't know that before the elections has been living with their heads in the sand. So, and another interesting thing that the BBC, you were talking about the BBC putting things in a specific order in their article. Buried down in the article somewhere is this idea that places that voted most strongly for Remain in the referendum saw turnout increase more compared with the last election in 2014 than places which voted most heavily for Leave. That's a direct quote. So that suggests that the Leavers the Remainers, people who want to remain, came out disproportionately for this election because they have something to complain about. Like people did in the midterms in America. Historically the incumbent president does badly because people come out to complain about the status quo. So you could knock something off the anti-Brexit bar for that sentiment, potentially. So this is another factor that goes into meaning that it's so difficult to draw any particular who won, who lost, pro-Brexit, anti-Brexit from this election. All you can get is that it's close and we're still divided, which everyone knew beforehand and everyone still knows now.
I think it is important to point out how big the turnout was compared to the last one in 2014, which, to be honest, I mean, I was still a teenager back then and I wasn't, well, not quite actually, but I really wasn't.
I was still at Cambridge, but I was still a loopy lefty then. I was still loving a bit of.
I do not even remember a single thing about that election. I don't know if you do.
No, neither do I. Neither do I.
Like when I found out that UKIP held a 30% share of the votes and that they had a lot of their MEPs in Europe, like up until a couple of weeks ago, that actually really surprised me when I first heard that something like a few years ago, because people who care about the EU enough to vote in the EU elections don't like the EU. It's like nobody cared about the European elections except for the Brexiteers. Way back when in 2014, they were pretty fringe sort of number of people, but nobody cared about that until now, and then everybody actually cares about the European elections, even though it matters less than ever.
Exactly. It's so hard to work out, have people come out to complain that we're going to Brexit, or have people come out to complain that we were going to Brexit, but we haven't done it yet and our vote isn't being counted. It's so hard to know, how that is going. And the turnout overall. So if you look at the Brexit Party winning whatever percentage they did, 32%, and then the actual turnout of the election, 37%, and times them together, you're only getting like 12-13% of the entire electorate. So you're making, if you're trying to extend this to a general election, you're really extending something from a very small sample size to a general election where the turnout will be much higher. And again, it's a difficult process to do that. And I think, as you alluded to earlier, the Brexit Party, they're kind of at the moment a very single issue party. They don't have a manifesto on, economics and a fleshed out idea on immigration or healthcare or schooling or whatever it might be. So it's hard to know how they'll translate into a general election when those policies come on the table. They've got a by-election in Peterborough in a couple of weeks, I believe, which maybe will give some insight into that. But I think at the moment they're kind of happy just running around going, "Do you still want Brexit? Vote for us." In a general election, that's just not going to be enough when people are concerned about healthcare and schooling and the real big issues, which of course Brexit feeds into, but which will have a much higher sort of coefficient in people's thinking at a general election.
Yeah, I do have to go soon, but I want to wrap up just by saying, now I've forgotten what I was going to say.
That's one way to wrap up.
Your point was too interesting, and I forgot what I was about. I was going to talk about a second referendum, because I think a lot of people are using this result and that stupid graph that we were just talking about as a justification, saying, okay, well, look how many people voted for Lib Dems specifically because they want to want to cancel Brexit, because why else would you vote for the Lib Dems? It's absolutely ridiculous, obviously.
The CUK party, we'll call them, so we don't get flagged. It's kind of unlucky for them in a way, because they assumed that the Lib Dems were kind of dead, that they were sort of busted flush, and that they'd come into that space and fill it. And then the Lib Dems have come sort of roaring back, and there's no reason for the CUKs to exist. So in some ways they're a bit unlucky with that. But yeah, please go ahead with what you were.
I was just going to say that I think, I mean, like I said, it's what we said at the start, it's a Rorschach test. And what I'm seeing in this Rorschach test is this map with the massive blue-teal wave, which seems to me that the UK is still very much in support of Brexit, and maybe even more than before when we had the original election, the original referendum. And yet I'm really worried that they're going to use this as a justification for a second referendum, which is one of the worst outcomes that I can think of, just because it's just such a slap in the face to the idea of having a referendum in the first place. It just really irritates me.
Well, as you said, or you kind of alluded to earlier, I'd have more respect if they just stood on a manifesto, these Remain parties, and just said, look, if you vote for us, we're just going to cancel it. There's not going to be a referendum because we obviously don't really want the referendum. We just want to cancel it. So show your hand. We're either going to leave, definitely, with the Tories, perhaps, or if you vote for Labour, we're definitely going to stay, and just get over this sort of second step where we have another referendum that nobody wants. Just, like I say, if you're going to have the de facto referendum, let's just have it out and be honest about what you're wanting, because I get the sense that if we had another second referendum, it's just going to be close again. There's going to be no clear mandate, and it's not really going to take us anywhere further forward. And we're going to have the same fights that we're having now, going on again for another 3-4 years. Just the feeling in the country that I get from most people is just get it done, just bite the bullet. And I think people are just bored with it now, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being bored of it, I think it's a good time to finish this video.
Yeah, there we go. Cleaned up now.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you very much for talking to me. It's good to have another British person to discuss things, especially since I think you know just a little bit more about this than I do.
It's only because I did a bit more reading this morning, you mean? So that's
fun. Exactly, yeah.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, I hope that everything recorded all right, and thank you very, very much for watching, everybody who's still here, and I'll see you again soon. And please go over to Sam's channel, Bad Boy of Science, if you want to see videos by him, which you do because they're great. And
you're always welcome, particularly if you disagree with me, and many do. Hope to see you over there. But
right. Have a good day.
Talking, and I'll catch you later. Same to you.
On Tuesday at 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, I'm going to be on a live stream with the Academic Agent. He makes videos on political and economic subjects, and I think he's a pretty smart guy, although I don't agree with him on a lot of things, actually. He has these streams called Unpopular Opinions, where he and a few other people, including Adam Unfriended, if you know him, he sometimes appears on them, where they just go through some news stories from that week and some unpopular opinions or hot takes that they want to that they all give their opinion on. The people on the stream are really funny and seem to know a lot about all different things, so it's interesting to listen to. I think if you enjoy my channel, you'll definitely enjoy listening to that, especially the one that I'm going to be on. So look forward to that, and I'll put out a tweet and maybe some kind of notification on YouTube just to remind you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.